Welcome to the first official, but not the first recorded, TJZ RambleCast. I guess we should do a little brief intro to us. How about we go around, handle here, and then maybe like your favorite games. Start with that. We can talk about what we plan to talk about, and then I know Zay has a few questions she wants to start. So I will go first. This is Tatharis. I am the current one speaking, of course. For me, I would say my favorite games of all time fall with the first two Fallouts. Bethesda is not Fallout. Hey, old grognards like me. Let's see, Final Fantasy Tactics, XCOM. What else should be in there? New school of my classics now is Fire Emblem Three Houses. Jagged Alliance, can't forget that. There you go, there's a good little list. I'm sure there's others. Who wants to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. Hi, my name is Zay. I've been gaming since about the Atari era with the whole Miss Pac-Man, Pac-Man, Q*bert. My favorite games are Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 6, 7, both the original and the remake, Final Fantasy 8, the Dishonored series, Prey, the Hitman series, and Alien Isolation. So that is me.
All right, I guess it's me then. I'm Jaedaen, or as I used to fashion myself, Jaedaen, but nobody calls me that. It's just Jaedaen. I'm an old gamer. I cut my teeth actually on the Commodore 64 back in the day, so we're talking early 80s here. But I played a lot of games since then. The most obsessive that I ever got about games, I guess, was Dune 2 back in the day, old Westwood Studios game. Diablo 1 I played incessantly, and Diablo 2 as well.
Good choice. I could have put that on there as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at how much it's shaped modern gaming. I mean, it created the action RPG genre. But anyway,
That's a podcast all of itself, I'm sure.
It is. We could certainly talk about that.
I have a topic for that.
All right.
It covers a whole gamut of fun stuff.
And we'll get into it. In terms of the games I've been playing lately, the most hours I got on a game now is actually Crusader Kings 3. I've been playing that. I just got the DLC where there's a new struggle mechanic. Actually, Tatharis and I played multiplayer a couple of times, and that is actually really fun. You just have to kind of coordinate with the other person because if I play a single player, there's a lot of pausing and a lot of waffling around. But usually, I think we play at speed 1 or speed 2, and that works pretty well for the most part. But yeah, I'm also kind of a music nerd. I've been getting into playing I play the violin. I've been playing some electric violin lately. I've been doing a lot of practicing with that.
You nudge to put a link to your channel at the bottom of this?
Yeah, go ahead. My channel, I just do basically orchestral. It's the nerdiest thing ever. I do orchestral remixes of old video game soundtracks and a couple of live covers, not too many of them. The most being my many years old as an Undertale track that I did that got a couple thousand. That's the height of my fame. I'm a very small YouTuber, but that's okay because I don't do it to make money. I don't do it for anything other than the passion for what I do. And that's really what it should be about. If you have a podcast, if you have a YouTube channel, it should be about whatever you're most passionate about. Because as nerds, we all know we get very, very passionate about certain subjects and we get way into them. And that's really what it should be about, in my opinion.
That's why I have a list of a few things that are on my list for later. Not this episode.
Yeah. And talk hours upon hours and hours.
Oh yeah, we're going to go down some rabbit holes. So now we've proven we are neither the most professional and hopefully not the most unprofessional that we've heard in the past. But at least we have a documented for history of people actually care for reference on our gaming background. There's some what's interesting to us. So I guess let's set the stage. We're going to be doing probably mostly talking about video games, but as you already mentioned, your music nerd stuff, I'm pretty sure we'll talk about other stuff. We'll probably talk tabletop at some point. Talk about other things. We're going to avoid hot button issues like politics and whatnot. The whole point is to have fun and just talk about things that we want to nerd out on. Provide our own spin on things, not go too crazy.
Get on boxes when we need to, and passionately rant about X, Y, or Z. I'll be talking probably a lot about video game soundtracks, which I love. and many other things as well.
All right, I think that's good. So I've pretended to be host long enough, not that I really am. So I'll turn it to Zay, since she's the one that had the initial couple of items.
Okay, I have 2 items that I've been thinking about for about a week or so. And I can go first to give you guys some time to think about it because I have not told you what these 2 questions are. So my 2 questions are, what is the very first game that you can remember that made you go, yeah, I am into this. I am now a gamer. And then the second follow-up question to that is, and it may be the same game, but for me it's not, so we'll find out in your answers. What game was it that shaped you and shaped what games you like? That you played and made you go, you know what, I like this genre, or this is what I like, and has made an influence on the type of games that you play now. For me, the very first game that made me go, you know what, I really like this shit. I am a gamer, I want to play more, was Final Fantasy 1. At the time, it was just pretty much brand new. My second console that I ever owned was the original Nintendo. My very first console was an Atari 2600. That should tell you around my age. I hate that.
I think we're all in the same boat here.
Yeah. But when I started playing Final Fantasy 1, it was just, I had not seen anything like that before in my experience. It was, for me, story rich. Mind you, we all know different now. It was fun to play, engaging. I spent so many hours on that game. I can even remember playing that game as soon as I would get home from school and being up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning playing it. And sometimes even my father, who would just sit there watching me play it, would just go, okay, you need to go to sleep, I'll level. Because one of the things we found out really early on playing the game is going to Crescent Island as quickly as we could, just run into the inn, come out, do one fight, pretty much get our asses kicked, go in, sleep. And that's the way we would level and get money in the game. I think I played about 5 run-throughs of the game from start to finish, different setups. There was one setup that I tried which was kind of scuffed, which was red mage, white mage, black mage. Pretty much mage party.
I mean, that works. It's just a different style, right? You don't have the big melee frontliner. You got your
It was
hybrids.
hard as hell.
But you had a lot of magic.
Yes.
You just didn't have the really good magic. I could see it being hard.
That's what I wanted it for. I wanted to have a little bit of a backup of white magic, a little bit of backup of black magic, and a little bit of fighting. It was just really hard.
I think my classic party was the fighter, nunchuck dude, black belt turned whatever. I think that was my successful party. I wanted to try the thief, but he wasn't very impressive early. I love the red mage, but I understand why you would have had problems. I think I messed around with that a little bit too. Fighter, red mage, white mage, black mage.
Yeah. What my ultimate run or setup was: fighter, red mage, white mage, black mage.
I think that's a really solid answer. I think that's probably one of the seminal games that I played, but I'm not going to copy your answer for other reasons.
As far as the second question, what game shaped how I play now and the titles I play now? The original Thief.
Also nice.
It was an amazing game. Nothing like it that I can remember at the time. Just being able to do sneaking around, trying to make myself as quiet as possible by using the moss arrows. taking care of the torches with the water arrow, sneaking around people, and a lot of times knocking them out and throwing them into the river. Um, I'm sorry, that was my favorite thing to do in the ones that had the river side, is just knocking somebody else and then just go chunk, and then suddenly hearing them in the background go ooh, ooh, ooh. But that is the one game, even though I do love the Final Fantasy series, the ones that I've played, Thief, I think, influenced me more as far as the type of games I really enjoy. I really enjoy things like Hitman series. Well,
Yeah.
the newer ones. I love being as sneaky as possible, being undetected, not killing people, going about these games and trying to, and I know making it harder on myself because I'm trying to do it without killing people, but being undetected. And that's one of the things that I learned from the Thief series, even though you did end up killing a lot of people in that game, in those games, Thief 1 and Thief 2. But that really influenced the type of games that I enjoy now. One of the things I could not really get into, Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, because even though there was some sneaking around you could do, it really wasn't tight
It
as far
wasn't
as the
really,
gameplay.
but it wasn't really stealth combat either, right? It was like a little QTE nonsense.
Directed by Hideo Kojima. Don't forget
Yeah,
that.
I know.
How could you forget?
I
Right.
know.
Every 2 seconds in that game, you see that. Yeah.
But, those are the type of games. And of course, like I mentioned, Arcane is one of my favorite studios. Even though I'm not necessarily sure about their two latest games, even though I haven't played them, they just don't hit my niche, my want of the type of game. But of course, I've played, I don't know how many times I've played Dishonored, the original Dishonored now. Even now, I think it was just recently I played the original Dishonored completely combat, which usually the first thing I do is completely hidden, don't kill anybody, try to get everything, which is one of the hardest things to do. And I played Dishonored 2 as Emily, and it was the power fantasy with Emily on Dishonored 2,
Hmm.
killing everything. Well, except some of the civilians, but most of the time is just going ahead and playing Corvo or playing Emily completely hidden, undetected, a ghost. And that's the type of thing that I enjoy.
Yeah. Agreed. I really like the world building in Dishonored. Very, very solid. The weird sort of Victorian kind of era where everything runs on whale oil, and instead of scientists, they have natural philosophers. Like in the past. Very cool.
Have you actually seen the most recent one, which was, well, most recent to me, anyways, Death of the Outsider?
Oh no, I haven't actually.
It is actually on Game Pass, and it was a really good wrapping around of the story of the outsider.
Yeah, it's a really good closing out of that whole series. If they're gonna do a third one at some point, they have to do a bunch more world building to make it make sense. Not that that's a bad thing.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
It was a good ending, in my opinion, from watching Zay play it.
Very cool. All right, so who's next in regards to the
I'll let
games?
you go first, because I'll bat up the rear and so I can kind of transition, make up something for what we're going to talk about after.
Okay, this is a difficult question for me because every account of both of my parents says that I played video games before I learned how to do pretty much anything else. I think I was maybe 3 or so when I started playing, which my memory doesn't go back that far, but in terms of what I remember, obviously when we think about our earliest memories, oftentimes one of the things that we remember the most is the more traumatic ones, right?
Mhm.
For me, there was a video game on Commodore 64 called Forbidden Forest. And that game scared the shit out of me as a 5-year-old. It was very scary. It was the first game, to my knowledge, that actually had pixelated gore. And the music was just terrifying. In
Whatever
fact,
Space Quest game that had the zombie at the very early that screamed at you, I
oh,
noped
sure.
out of that game so hard. I loved King's Quest and Space Quest back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I
But
played a lot of those Zaerah games for sure
Mhm.
later in my
But
childhood.
when I saw that one, then the thing just goes at me. I'm like, nope, not playing it. I didn't play, and I never finished it. Never touched it again. Anyway, I'm
Sure.
sorry. Continue.
Oh, no worries. Maybe we'll put a link of, because nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say Forbidden Forest. But if you check the link out and watch the game, I mean, it looks terrible by today's standards, obviously. But as a 5-year-old little kid in like 1986, it was horrifying. And later in my childhood, as you mentioned, Tath, I played a lot of those Sierra adventure games as well. I mean, Sierra dominated the adventure game landscape in the 80s and 90s. Everybody played those games that had a computer at the time, was lucky enough to have a computer. But in terms of games that sort of defined a genre that I didn't ever want to stop playing, is got to be Bust a Groove. I think that was PlayStation 1.
You music nerd. That
It was the
totally makes sense.
It was the first rhythm game that I ever played. And I got so good at that game. Like, if YouTube existed at that time, I totally would have put a video of me blindfolding myself and beating the game. That's how good I got at that game. Because it was so fun. There was nothing else like it. But it became so easy over time. I had to invent my own challenge for it to keep it interesting. So I turned the TV off and I just played it through my stereo. And I learned all the moves, and I learned when to dodge and when to do all this other stuff, depending on audio cues, right? And I could easily beat it on hard with my eyes closed. It was great.
That definitely qualifies as a game that shaped you.
Yes.
If you ever get to that level where doing things like that, you were shaped.
I really don't know why I am so jaw-dropped surprised at this, considering how much we know that you're into music and into even doing your whole recreations of music of games. I don't know why I'm so gobsmacked, really, but okay, it makes sense.
It was honestly not that difficult of a game to do that with, compared to like Dance Dance Revolution, which I got very good at in my 20s. Actually, was the best in shape I've ever been in my life. I would have crowds that formed around me when I went to arcades. It was pretty awesome. But there was a select number of moves that you knew how to do the things, and then you would hear the attack from the other player, and then you would know at the next measure you had dodge, and then you would dodge and it would be fine. But
it still
you also
takes
had to
dedication and passion to get there.
No,
it did.
I'm not trying to. No, I guess I am trying to downplay it, but
not letting you.
I appreciate that. So yeah, those are probably the two games. Yeah, I guess this is more than anything a gaming-focused podcast, which is great. I mean, honestly, when it comes to all of the hobbies that I have, gaming has got to be at the top of the list. So,
sure. All right. You want me to round it out, or do you have anything else?
No. I mean, this is the RambleCast, but let's.
We're gonna ramble. That's not gonna change.
We are gonna ramble, but that's okay. We're gonna put chapters here in, to where everybody answers the question. Oh, we're talking about Metal Gear here, or we're talking right.
I'm roughly keeping track of the various things, but my timelines are not correct. So I have things like it's at like X-ish. So hopefully we can find it. All right. So for me, I was thinking about this. So we'll start with the fun facts about my history. So I had a Commodore 64 before I had a Nintendo. Those would be the first two gaming systems for me. Not that a Commodore 64 necessarily was just gaming, but so I had a relative of mine who toured the country doing talks about Commodore 64 stuff. I don't know anything more than that. I was too young. But because of that, I ended up with a Commodore 64 and like, I don't know, 4 boxes of floppy disks with random stuff on them. Most did not work. But that was the first thing I explored. And so when Zay said, "Hey, what is your first thing?" The first game that pops into my mind that I can remember the name of that I enjoyed, I remember playing for hours, was Spy vs. Spy.
That was a good one. I had Spy versus Spy as well. It was hard, as I recall, but yeah.
It was fun. I just loved setting up the traps. And then there was like this side-scrolling game that played, kind of MIDI Johnny Comes Marching Home and some other kind of those type of songs. It was like a vehicle that could shoot and you could jump over things, and it went through. I can't remember the name of the game. I played both of those a ton. There was also a flying game where you could like end up getting into the sewers. It was a side view of a city, and like you were like just shooting stuff. I don't remember any of these. I don't remember what either of those two names, but those are the three that stick out that I played the most out of all those floppy disks. But they didn't shape me. Like they already mentioned Final Fantasy 1, I played a ton of that. But if I was going to say what shaped my gaming, I kind of already alluded to this. It's Fallout 1 and 2, the real Fallout's not Bethesda's crap. Fallout 3 and 4 are fine. They're just not Fallout games. We've talked about this off the podcast many times. I'm super old school grognard. No more mutants represent here. I wasn't actually a member of the forum, but I knew that was the bastion of all the grognards.
Oh yeah, no mutants allowed. Did you ever go there?
I went there all the time. I just wasn't like I didn't post or anything. I was a lurker. But
Sure.
I was they were my brothers in arms, even though they didn't know who I was.
Sure. You related to them. I mean, I played Fallout 1 and 2 more than almost all other games, except for the ones I mentioned earlier, I guess. Those are games that I really shared a love with for my dad quite a bit as well.
And then Final Fantasy Tactics,
Yeah.
which was the creation of a new genre, the Final Fantasy Tactics genre. And I've played tons of things. Shout out to Fell Seal as a true spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics on Steam.
Okay.
Fantastic. Very, very similar. It's not as good. I mean, but it's hard. I mean, Final Fantasy Tactics had it all. It had a fantastic story. Me being the amateur writer that I am.
Sure.
It appeals to me. I mean, that was a very serious, very heavy story that they had in for that type of game. Plus the game, I mean, sure, it was repetitive. I was obsessed with unlocking every class. But yeah, I mean, I love games with a good story. I'm not interested in Dark Souls. That probably brands me a heretic. I don't care if it's hard. I mean, again, another thing we've talked about outside of the podcast, and I'm sure we'll talk again, right? Like, I'll make my own difficulty. Fire Emblem Three Houses, Lunatic represent. I played that game 3.5 times. I'll keep proselytizing that game.
Well, as much as you rave about that game, I really should play
It's not a perfect game, but it's so fun. I mean, if they took out the dating sim part of it.
Oh, there's a dating sim? I didn't even know that.
Basically, you can kind of groom the various kids in the school you can try and point them to get in relationships with each other. And it is a little weird because you're a teacher, but you're the same age as the students. I'm not talking. So you will, and there's a time skip in the game. That's a mild spoiler, but not horrendous. But in the second half, after X number of years have passed, then you could potentially develop a relationship when all the serious shit starts happening with a character. You don't have to, but I mean, it is part of that. I don't mind there being romances and stories. That's fine. That part of it's a little cringy. The game as a whole, I mean, like, I'm not saying it's a perfect game, but I played it 3.5 freaking times, dude. Maybe 4 now, technically. I've had 2 different lunatic attempts. But I mean, the first one I fell off to go do other things because I'd already played it I'd already played it 3 times, and that was my 3rd in a row. They watched half of it. I just played I went for every house. I got their viewpoint on it, and then I was like, now I'm going to do a hard run. And then I kind of fell off because something else came out. But I played it 3 times in a row, back to back. And then after the DLC finally came out, and they added the technical, a quote-unquote 4th house, which isn't really a 4th house, but they play into the plot. It's a DLC where you can get a story about them that's unrelated. I played through their DLC, and then I started over another super hard run. That's why I say I've technically played it 4 times, because I played it halfway through twice, in addition to 3 complete playthroughs. I haven't done anything. I haven't done that with any other game.
Well, what's insane is the fact that I sat there watching him and helping him throughout the game and making certain decisions when it comes to relationships. And yes, there's certain things that are kind of cringy, but it was a very good game.
Sure.
I enjoyed watching him just play the game and seeing the decisions that he made. It's just, like I said, the relationships part can be a little cringy, but I think you should play it.
The downside is it's on Switch, but
well, that's the thing. I don't have a Switch, but you told me you like the story quite a bit as well, which honestly, I feel like story is so underrepresented in games. I feel like there's it's so easy for developers, I feel like, to just pass off the story as just something that anyone can do. Anyone could write a story, right? But a really good writer is worth his weight in gold. I personally think
it pulls you into a game way more. You can get
Yes.
so invested if you truly understand it, and it's not just the trite stuff. Again, that's like Final Fantasy Tactics for its era. That is a very dark and heavy story.
So what's the best writing you've seen in a recent game?
Last of Us. The original Last of Us.
That is excellent. The ending is incredible. I don't want to talk more about that if people haven't seen it, but no, that really was.
I mean, come on, it's had
good.
one remake and they're working on remaking it again unnecessarily.
Sure.
I think you can talk about it. If people haven't seen that game yet, just go play it. It was good.
Sure. How about you, Tath? What do you think the best writing is in a recent
I'm
game?
flipping. I'm just scrolling down my Steam. I mean, Fire Emblem Three Houses is a pretty strong contender. I'm just trying to think if there was anything after.
Oh, I definitely have my take on it here.
For Charming, Wilderness was, but it's not.
Yeah.
But it's more of a almost like a step above childhood or fables for kids or whatever. Because I mean, it doesn't.
Sure.
I mean, it can get somewhat serious, but it's not it's not like Last of Us or what it saw in Final Fantasy Tactics or we saw in Fire Emblem Three Houses. They're just they're basic stories for almost for kids. Maybe it's fun. I really enjoyed that. I don't think I'd put it over Fire Emblem Three Houses or Last of Us. It's a good pick.
I understand what you're saying about that with regards to Wildermyth, but I think Wildermyth, as far as one of the very few games of that type, as far as, because you know me, I don't like tactic games. I think that its story is rich enough that it's one of these games that is near and dear in my heart. Do I think it's the best storyline? No. I think that there's other elements within the game itself that just brings it all together to be a very solid title.
You know what? I've got two others I want to bring up. Now that I've flipped through here. So I'm going to say the latest Yakuza game, Like a Dragon. I really liked what they did with that. He was very emotional.
Sure.
But I thought they did a really good job with that. And from a different perspective, I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but Expeditions Rome did some elements that I've hinted at before that you didn't experience when you were playing it. But I chose to play a female character. The fact that they let you, despite how handicapped that put you in a Roman society, they addressed all that. They did a very good job of, you had to go through additional hurdles because of your station, because of being a woman. They acknowledged it, but they also made gameplay ways without just ignoring it completely and just going, yeah, we swear they were just as democratic as we are today. Women had total rights. No, they didn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't hold land. They couldn't do all that. And you do things like you can marry someone despite you might be having a romantic relationship with someone else. You can marry someone in the game just so you can get legal footing because they technically own it. You can make it a political wedding. The guy understands, but he respects you in your position and everything you've accomplished. So you can do that so that you can retain your rights, right? You get some say in the pot because of your being a military figure. So it was like they did a lot of things that were good where they acknowledged it. And I give it so much respect for what they did.
Agreed.
Like, I'm not saying it's a Pulitzer Prize winning story overall, but they did a good job with what they set out to do. And they did a good job acknowledging here are some of the problems. you can do this. We're going to let you do it because we want people to play the game and enjoy it the way they want to play. You're going to also experience it, or at least have it called out to you. This is how society was at that. Like I said, that's why I think it was worth saying. Like I could go on and on about about Like a Dragon too, but I mean, it doesn't have standout stuff from that perspective. So I think
that's good.
I think Like a Dragon was the better game, but I enjoyed them both.
I liked Yakuza 0 much more than Like a Dragon, but I didn't get as into the RPG elements, I guess, as you did. But I really liked the Yakuza 0 as well, and all the crazy side quests. And I love the fact that they didn't edit anything for American audiences, right? It was just fully imported as is, right? Like anyone that's going to play these games is going to understand the weird cultural differences between America and Japan anyway, right? So.
Yeah. Oh, Yakuza 0 is a solid game, but I didn't play it. I only experienced it by watching it.
Well, sure. It was an action type of game you don't particularly play a lot.
But it was strong. So. I mean, it was really great. It set up Majima as this amazing character, and then it had then they had to turn him into the ridiculous thing he's actually in the rest of the series. I mean, there's serious parts of him, but I mean, you get a really good experience of what formed him, what kind of caused him to his personality to break in Yakuza 0, right? They did a really good job. It was a very solid game, but
it's sad to see Majima go from what he is in 0 to what he becomes. But you see how like you said, you see how he becomes broken in that way, where it makes sense that he becomes the person that he does. Because the person that he becomes, I like far less than who we see in Yakuza 0, to be perfectly frank.
Agreed.
When it comes to my perspective, I think in terms of writing, I gotta say Disco Elysium takes the cake for me. Like that was best writing.
That's a really good choice, yes. And I don't know how I didn't see it on my list. That is probably the ultimate. There has not been a better written game than that. I mean, it is the cream of the crop.
It really is. And it's like I played Game Deck, which felt like a store brand version of Disco Elysium, to be perfectly frank. Not that it was bad, but it was not nearly as just mind-blowingly well written. And to be frank, I say that because it sort of came at a time in my life where I was getting over a relationship that had ended. And there were a lot of parallels in terms of at least my path that I took in the game.
To tag on to that, Citizen Sleeper, totally need to play this game.
Oh, I have not played that one.
It is not as good as Disco Elysium. It's also not as long, but it's also like 50, but it's the tagline for it is role playing in the fragmented shell or the ashes of a capitalist cyberpunk future, something like that.
Okay.
You start out just trying to survive, and then you get more goals where you're trying to do more things. I'm being very vague. It is not a long game. You can finish it in a day or two.
Kind of like those little bite-sized games.
There's a lot of dialogue. It's all about you playing your character. Once you finish an ending, it kind of resets you before you make the critical choice that finishes that ending. I think there's like 5 or 6 endings, maybe 7. I can't remember what it said. There's a couple that I just wouldn't get because of how I played. Very clear, I prioritize things in a proper order to survive. So the most imminent threats I dealt with first, and kind of just explored the other things, right? But I'm pretty sure that some of those things, if I had not done it the way I did, that probably leads to a couple of the other endings.
Citizen Sleeper. I will have to
really good.
Check that out on Steam. I appreciate the recommendation.
Like I said, not as good as Disco Elysium. Again, there hasn't been a game that's been. Someone eventually will make a game that trumps it in the story setup.
Sure, but it'll take a while, I feel like, because that really was just incredible. Well, it added something different to these type of games, which I'd like to make note of. I've never played a game where you start off the game as just completely like totally gone off the rails. You're barely holding on, and there's just so much trauma that you've had to deal with, and you're not dealing it with in the most healthy way. And it's like, okay, you're stepping into the situation as a player, right? Like, how do you handle it? Like, everybody's going to handle it a little bit differently. But just the novelty of that, but also the world building is just absolutely incredible. I'm not at all surprised to learn that what's the guy's name that wrote it? Robert Kurtzman, I believe. Basically, originally started with this as sort of a tabletop RPG setting. So
it's
like,
not
he's
just
been
a
building
setting,
the
dude.
world.
It's their RPG game group that they played for 20 years.
Which tells you something
which is why
right?
nothing can meet up to. Because if you are iterating on something for 20 freaking years for
So much
free,
time. Yeah,
you've got so much material. Like there's so much that they already had. Like even their next game won't be able to compare because it won't have that much preparation time. Not that they
sure.
intended it. That doesn't mean it'll be bad. I will say also, outside of like playing a Cthulhu tabletop, I don't think there's pretty much anything else where you can just read a book, have a heart attack, and die in a cutscene.
No,
That is
the first
totally
time I played
possible in there. I didn't have it done, but Carrick from the ACG podcast talked about it. That happened to him very quickly on his first playthrough.
I died within 5 minutes. I think I had very low health, and I tried to grab the tie off of the fan, and I had a heart attack and died within the first 5 minutes of starting the game. It's like, oh, it's going to be one of those kind of games, is it? Okay, maybe I should re-roll a character that has more than one health. Okay.
I liked my character in that. So I played like my character was very, very smart. He was basically Sherlock. Like I had way too many points. I got so much information that I didn't need in the game. But like he was clearly a criminal, or not a criminal mastermind, detective. Like I said, just like Sherlock Holmes.
Sure.
Like I walked to that crime scene with the suicide, and I just instantly point out every. It's like, boop, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. But he also had a dissociative break. He refused to accept that he was the person before he woke up. Like he's like, no, it's a totally different person. I never touched drugs. I never did anything. It was just like he hit this low, and he just went on that bender. And then when he re-woke up, he was just like, no, that was the old me, or that's not even me. Like I don't associate with that person anymore. I'm literally like 30 seconds old. I'm proceeding with my life. But he keeps getting things pointed out to him, right? Like it's like, no, dude, you did this. You crashed your car. He's like, that wasn't me. Nope.
That's a great way to play. I was very contrite, and I played the sorry cop for a while. My character was
I did panhandle everywhere, so I did that too. He was very sad for a while until I got my economy going.
Sure, that's one of those games. I replayed it through on hardcore, where there's less money and more chances that you've got to do more drugs, like to pass the checks and stuff, which is pretty fun. But for me, I played it through a couple of times, but the first time I played it through, I was a sort of emotionally intelligent. I talked about the spirits, and I'm basically this like psychic guy or whatever, believes that he's psychic. And in fact, there's one point during the game, spoiler alert if you haven't played it, but where you've got to actually climb up this rusty ladder, and my character imagined myself teleporting to the top of the building, and really he just
walked,
climbed the ladder.
Yeah. There's so much good stuff. I waffled between capitalist and communist for a while. Like I picked up a few different like weirdnesses. He was art cop for a while.
Oh, I definitely played art cop on my character.
Well, you were the emotionally intelligent one. I had a little bit of that. Like my big shtick was he was just super smart. Like he solved that crime. He knew everything about what went. Couldn't fight his way out of a bag or much. I think that was it. It was like I was smart and emotionally intelligent.
Sure. It was a fun character. And then I played through as a physical character who was just dumb as a bag of hammers, right?
Did you beat up the racist people?
Yeah, I kicked him right in the face. It was
probably felt good after getting your ass kicked repeatedly by him trying to figure out how to deal with that first playthrough.
Yes. But to anybody that's watching this, the two nerds that we don't know that might watch this in the future, definitely play that game if you haven't already. And you like reading. If you don't like reading, don't play it.
Yeah, that's our official hot take for this episode. Disco Elysium is good. Go play it.
Such a hot take, right? Such a controversial opinion. It's not like it's been super lauded by everyone. Or
exactly. Okay, Zay. So we geeked out on Disco Elysium. I know you watched a little bit of me, but do you have another topic you want to bring up?
No, it was mostly those two questions because I thought that that would be something to start off the podcast
I think it
as
was a good
far
starter.
as being
I agree.
able to let people know what kind of games shaped us. Because for me, like I mentioned, Final Fantasy 1, I had played plenty of games before that, especially um on the Atari 2600 and even on the NES, but NES at the time, I don't think there were too many games I was interested into. I was playing a lot of tennis, motorbike, duck hunt on the NES. Before that, on the 2600, I had played, there was a Smurfs game on
Yes,
the
there
Atari
was.
2600.
I remember playing it not because I owned it, but because the person who babysat me eons ago, he had an Atari. I had one. He had that Smurfs game. Terrible.
I had the free Atari, the 5200, not the 2800, but the 5200, and nobody had 5200 games or bought it, or I think like
Well, that
two
was the
people.
crash of Atari, right? That
That was during the video game crash. I think what was it, 1983, 1984?
Yeah.
Back when everybody thought that video games were fad, and then Nintendo had to come in with their little stupid robot to be like, "No,
Super
wait, it's a
Famicom.
toy,
Not
not
that
a
they
video
called it
game."
here.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, it's in 2600 it was things like River Raid that I played that a lot with my dad. I
was a good one.
played also, of course, like a lot of people did, Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, also Arkanoid,
Yeah.
Qbert, and
I can't
those
remember what system, but Pitfall. I think the Atari one
Pitfall
might have been.
2600 ran it.
Oh,
I really like
I
Pitfall
loved
too.
that game. I played through it. I was good enough to get through all the stages. And again, I never
Yeah.
owned an Atari. I just played at a friend's house.
But those games really, yeah, you can get hooked to the fact that you're trying to beat a particular record or beat whatever mindset that you had put for yourself or goal that you had put yourself. But
Mhm.
storyline, really? Miss Pac-Man? Arkanoid?
Arkanoid was the shit back then. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, did you see that they're remaking Arkanoid?
Yeah, they're kind of doing the Tetris effect thing.
Yeah. Interesting, but I would not get the game just because of the fact that you can potentially find a clone of it for free on Android.
Well, you can just play a lot of those super simple games on not Flash sites anymore because Flash is dead, but browser games at this
itch.io
point.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But
So yeah,
but story-wise, no.
You're not
so
coming
how
through.
long do we plan on doing these podcasts anyway? Is we're going to do an hour thing, 2 hours? I would imagine it's probably good to start on the lower side initially, given that
I imagine we may have a bunch of two-parters. Really, it goes as long as we decide we want to random talk about things.
and then
least
we can just
officially.
continue that for the next. Sure.
I did
'Cause,
have
yeah,
one other
definitely-
topic that I figured would be good for this. I also want us to talk Blizzard and Bethesda. That might be best for
That could be a 2-parter, 3-parter, 4-parter
That's
because of all the
definitely
issues.
one of those things we could talk about for a bit. It's just like any organization. I feel like this is not even related to specifically video game companies in general, but more related to just companies, right? You'll have the old status quo, that which has been working for a long period of time, and then you'll have a new, very bright-eyed, usually younger upstart that's like, wait a minute, we can do something better. Here's what we're going to do. Here's why it's going to be better. We're really excited about this. We're so passionate. And then they come along and they take everyone by storm because it's so different. And then everybody loves them and they grow a big fan base. And then, eventually they cash out or, become the old guard, to where now that's the new thing that's innovative is now old hat. It's the status quo because it's gotten so popular, and then the cycle repeats again, right? And we're clearly at that stage with Blizzard and Bethesda, to where they're the old guard. There's not providing anything new, nothing innovative, but because they've been around for so long, they're going to get that level of respect based upon the image that they built from when they were younger. Yeah,
That's a good start. We'll save more for that for when we really dig into it. I think there's a few different levels that we talk there.
sure.
So the topic I did want to bring up, though, that is a simple one, which we have talked about before pre-podcasts, but I figured it would be good to share with here as well. I want to talk about our gaming superpower. I think you listed a pretty good one already, Jaedaen, with what you did with Bust a Group. But if you have another one, feel free. I'll start with the one that is the infamous, that I can't remember. Like I said, I don't remember if we talked about it. GoldenEye. Be an explosives. I am immune. I can drop explosives at my feet, and everyone around me would die. I don't know, but that was my superpower. How about you, Zay?
That is a very hard question for me to say, just because of the fact that there's some games in the past, long ago, that I could swear that I've had superpowers in playing a game, but recently it's just kind of the type of games I've been playing. It doesn't feel like I've had kind of superpowers. It's mostly kind of like, okay, I'm fumbling through this and hoping that I make it out alive.
I mean, GoldenEye is circa 96, somewhere in there. But
Can't be that old, is it? That old, really?
oh, it's old. I mean, okay, maybe it's 98 or something. Somewhere from that time frame. I can Google it.
I'm Googling it right now. I'm very curious. 97. Wow.
See, I wasn't far off. It was, let's date myself. Early college years.
That's when you were in college.
Yeah, like my first or second year, I think.
Okay.
But I remember I played it with two groups of people. I played with the people who were at my college, and also played it when I came home for the summer with my buddies from my hometown. I didn't touch that game for years. Fast forward a bit to a visit with some of my family and chilling with my cousins, and they had it. And I regaled them with some of my previously mentioned powers.
Okay.
They, of course, just looked at me disbelieving. I can show you. I bet my skills are still there. I don't know why it happened. They did not believe me. I'm like, all right, we can play a couple rounds. You're not going to want to play after a couple rounds. And they did. And same thing, sure as shit. I just blew the hell out of them with those explosives. I mean, it was only explosives. I couldn't hit anything with that atrocious controller and shooting. Like, I'm not good at shooters. But for whatever reason, there was just something about how explosions worked in that game. I just knew how to place things. And to be fair, it's even that still doesn't explain it fully, because like I quite literally would drop like a grenade at my feet while someone is nearby, and I wouldn't die, but they would. That should not work, but it did for me.
Well, you know just how far away to be to avoid the blast, I guess, right? Or something like that.
But I was closer to the blast, dude. That's why it didn't make sense. That's why I called it. It's most certainly a superpower. Like I
never played that one, so yeah. I mean, it was great at the time. I just never had an N64. Had any friends that had one, but wow, 97. I didn't realize it was quite that old. I thought it was like early 2000s. I guess my memory is playing me here a little bit.
And to be fair, GoldenEye was a classic. I mean, it was
truly
may
a classic.
have been one of the best games. And I never played it single player. That was solely for multiplayer shittery. When I was in college, or like early college days, where I had time and you're in proximity with people in dorms and stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great. Honestly, I'm a couple years younger than you. I was a teenager. I think 16 or 17 at that time. So I just never had anybody that played it. But I watched all the coverage of how popular it was and how great and revolutionary it was for those type of games, and how you could do a 4-person split screen, right? 4 people sitting around an N64 and playing that. That was great.
What we did with our little tiny piece, probably in 480p if we're lucky.
Oh, sure. I wouldn't even say P. I mean, maybe, yeah, like if you're lucky. That's another thing that I'd like to talk about in the graphics video games front, right? So you have all these people playing all these old games. They upload videos to YouTube. I mean, heck, I even do it on my own channel when I want to match the soundtrack of what I'm remixing to video of the actual game. But we played all of those old games on, I think, 320i interlaced formats way back in the day, and the fact that there was only a line every other line really sort of blurred the way that those old pixelated graphics looked to make them look actually quite a bit better than they look when you upload them when everything's just progressive scan. It's almost kind of analogous to, you remember the stories of people that would put the Vaseline on the camera lenses when they're doing a close up to make everything just look, a little bit softer, a little bit nicer, right? But that's something I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about, so I thought I would mention it.
I am not the video nerd. I remember that stuff was crap, but to be fair, I'm not a videophile. Like,
Sure.
Super Nintendo graphics are fine for me. We've talked about this before. Like the era of Final Fantasy VII, the blocky arms for his muscle,
Sure,
is atrocious. Those games that I loved, Final Fantasy 2 and 3 American, also, which was 4 and 6, which I played the hell out of those games. But the graphic on the Super Nintendo, yeah, was totally fine for me. And they remade them, and the version that you can get on Steam, they remade it into the atrocious block art of Final Fantasy VII. The the cutscenes in Final Fantasy VII held up for years because I didn't play it at that point. I played it 10 years later or something. I was too busy playing Final Fantasy. So there's definitely an uncanny valley time, and now like the obsession with pushing graphics now doesn't matter to me because graphics were fine for me. Well, like the last 10 years, graphics have been more than fine if you want to push for quote unquote photorealistic nonsense. Sure, it's not perfect, but it was good enough. Or you just do what most indies do, and you choose an art style that doesn't require as much fidelity, and those are all fantastic.
Well, I think it also has to do with how far is technology at the point in which that was made, right? I remember looking back at stuff that I thought was photorealistic 20 years ago, and you look at it and it looks like crap now. But that's because we have so much better content out there to compare it to.
Heroes of Might and Magic, another series that should have been in my top list of played crap ton and loved. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is considered the best of the best. So I went back to GOG and I picked it up at one point, played it, and I'm like, hell with it. I thought this was great graphics back then. Now, fun fact, the only way you should get Heroes of Might and Magic series, especially 3, is on GOG, because it comes with all the expansions. There is a fan pack, I believe it's, that gives it HD graphics. Fantastic. Then you can actually understand what things are, and it's playable. Without that, good luck, bro. It's just like squiggly. That's supposed to be a castle? That's your definition of putting Vaseline on the lens. Yeah, I can't tell, dude. That's illegible at that point. But the gameplay still holds up once you give it a fresh coat of paint. And it doesn't make it modern, it just makes it makes it so that it has graphics that are not atrocious.
Well, I remember that game. I think I played 1 or 2. I don't think I ever played 3, but in terms of gaming superpowers, I guess I do have another one. There was in terms of like old school arena shooters, I used to play a lot of arena FPS shooters, Quake and Doom and all that stuff. But one that I really got into is got to be Unreal Tournament 2004. And I played that incessantly. I got very good at it. This was in my early 20s, right at the peak of my reflexes and everything else.
It's all downhill from there, man.
It was all downhill from there. Exactly. But I was very good at that time. I never actually joined clans or anything like that. Actually, later on, I did join an FPS clan for Sauerbraten, which was this weird open source FPS gaming game for Linux. This was when I was teaching myself Linux back when I decided to install full in Linux installation to teach myself Linux to get into the industry, right? But I still wanted to play my games, but I knew that if I had Windows, I would just go back to Windows. So I just had to wipe Windows out completely, stop playing Windows games. And, I think I did get into the expert round of some, or expert part of some clan. So I was still good at that point. This was still early to mid 20s, I guess. But now my reflexes are so terrible. I can't play those. What I would love to see as more of a thing is old people FPS shooters. Like you could only join this gaming league if you're over 40, right? Because now we all have crappy reflexes, right? So it's more of an even ground. But
I mean, there
can't
are
play
still people that will destroy us. At least your average person would destroy you.
Well, I'm told if somebody's my age and they're killing me, right? Okay, great. That's motivation, right? But if I'm playing against a 13-year-old, it's like, oh yeah, clearly your reflexes are 1,000 times better than mine. I'm old now, so that's going to be the case, right?
I have had to accept that I will play shooter because there's a lot of decent games that have been made, but that's the
Sure.
genre. A lot of co-op games, shooty based. So,
Sure.
like coming up, Redfall from Arcane. I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you will join Zay and I maybe and play some of that. That looks like it'll be fun. It's zombie hunting. Or sorry, vampires. But
This
there's
is
like
one thing you gotta know about Tath. He is absolutely a biggest fan of anyone I know of zombie games. He loves zombie games.
I love all things dystopian future. Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, and zombies. They are my jam.
That's the superset, actually.
I hate horror though.
Dystopia.
So don't ask me how that works out. I hate horror, but I love me some zombie games.
Yeah, it depends on the type of horror. There's some horror that I like and some that really doesn't resonate with me. More psychological and abstract and weird I like better. There's this really old indie game called, well, I don't know, like 10 something years ago, maybe not that old, called The Path. That's this horror game about don't deviate from the path. You got to go straight to grandma's house. It was like a Red Riding Hood thing. But the whole point is for you to like disobey those orders and go wander off in the woods. And then you find the horrors in the woods. And really the horrors are not so much, like actual wolves, but just, like traumatic events that happen in people's lives in general that screw you up and, put you on a certain path or whatever. And so that was interesting because it had a little more depth to it, honestly. But just a straight up horror game that's like, oh, I got to run from this monster, far less interesting to me. But that's just me.
So thanks to WPL76, I saw someone playing a game called Darkwood.
Darkwood,
it's like isometric looking, and you basically wake up in this place and you're trying to survive. And during the day, it's dangerous and it's deadly. Lots of psychological stuff. I think it's like Serbian dark fantasy. It may not be Serbian. I'm trying to remember. We watched someone who did a quick review afterwards because Zay walked in towards the end when I was watching. What is this? I have no idea. It's like, all right, if you want to watch a quick review, I just put it on because I'm like, I wanted something to listen to in the background,
Sure.
No, I would never play that game. Scary as fuck.
Yeah, it depends on the type, and I feel like there's not a specific type that I'm into versus not into. Honestly, I probably dislike Japanese horror more than most.
Except World of Horror.
World of Horror was very good, but I don't even think that was made by somebody Japanese. I think they were just appreciated the style. Now Junji Ito, the mangas, his horror, that's excellent horror. But that's an exception. Honestly, most Japanese horror I'm not that into. But if you're into mangas, read some Junji Ito. That's some psychologically unsettling horror.
I did say I can't stand horror, but I do have World of Horror on my screen. I bought it during one of the Steam winter sales. I'm just waiting for it to
Great.
officially release. It's at
It's a great game.
it's like
Very good
0.90 as of December.
Okay.
So like I think it was as I could have maybe it could have been December.
Okay, nice.
But I mean,
yeah, one.
let me look.
And it's good.
Yeah, December 2nd, 2021. It was at 0.9. So
Okay.
like
It's not fully out of beta.
there hasn't been any updates since then. So I'm guessing whoever made. They're probably doing their last big push before it goes 1.0. So I mean, maybe it'll be officially 1.0 by the end of the year. I think that's probably. There just hasn't been any updates since. But I mean, they take time. Like they do it like. The previous update before that one was October 30th. So of 2020. So almost a year.
Sure.
Or over a year, right? And that was 0.9, 0.17. So they went from 0.17 to 0.84 in a basically. So that to me says, yeah, by the end of this year, I'll probably be 1.0, and then I'll.
Well, that's good. I really liked it. It's not a very easy game, but it's totally 100% atmosphere.
It reminds me of Deja Vu.
Oh, that was another
Something
great game.
Gate. There was another game.
Shadowgate.
Shadowgate.
Yes.
It reminds me of those. I played both of those a lot. I didn't get very far because I was young to understand. I loved those.
Those were great Nintendo like adventure games. You didn't see a whole ton of those.
And this is just a homage, just a different thing. But I mean, with this kind of art style, this doesn't scare me. It is horror, but it's not. It doesn't creep me out. I mean, I love zombie games. Worst part for me for every zombie game we play is always the prologue, because you can't play co-op whenever you're playing those prologues. You always have to go through it, and then once you get through that prologue, like I'm just creeped out, just like desperately in a panic to get through it as fast as possible. But then once I can see the other player, like I'm good, and now I can just enjoy it.
Okay, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I've got some friends in this.
But you're always in the dark. You barely have a flashlight. Your flashlight, and you may not start with it. You may have to walk in the dark first before you find your flashlight. And there's always a bunch of jump scares. And jump scares don't bother me when I know there's another player character nearby. But when it's just me, it always freaks me the hell out.
Of course.
Zay can attest, when we were playing The Quarry, that first playthrough was killing me. But we played through it twice. Like the second time I was fine. Once I know what to expect, I can appreciate it and enjoy it, but it doesn't fill me with like an unending sense. What I think, thanks to Zay, I watched the Blair Witch Project or whatever it was called in the movie theaters.
You're talking about?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a super horror, like it's the scariest thing ever, but it freaked me out. Silent Hill, the first Silent Hill in the movie theater scared the shit out of me. There was just Silent Hill was perfectly atmospheric in the. But I don't but they're not. That's not my genre. Like I said, I have no tolerance for it.
For me, when it comes to horror in games, as long as it doesn't overuse gore, I'm okay with it. I have an issue with gore for gore's sake. It's just I understand the need for in certain films having that gore aspect, but just don't go flinging around gore all over the place just because, oh, look, you can throw it over here, you can throw it over there, and it can appear here. No, that's gore for gore's sake. Be a little bit more creative when it comes to your horror aspects, because there are so many subgenres in horror, in both in movies and games. Then don't just go, here is a pile of meat and tripe and blood and everything, and that's gonna be horror. No, that's you just being lazy.
I think The Quarry did a good job in that aspect. It was not a perfect game, but I think they did a mostly good job. Transformations of the monsters were gory, but they didn't, an animal dies at some point, but they didn't belabor it. They didn't, right? There's a little bit of it, but not. I don't think it's over the top. I think they did a good job in that.
Okay.
Your 30-second review of The Quarry is not as good as Until Dawn, but better than Dark Pictures. If you liked Until Dawn, you play The Quarry. It's totally worth it.
I hadn't even heard of The Quarry, and I'm looking at it on Steam now, and it just
came out.
New too. Yeah, it's very, very new.
They're not long games. They're it's like 8 hours, I think, for a playthrough, roughly. And then, like I said, we played through it twice. That's basically what we've been doing this week. And we were going to do a third playthrough to finally get like the best. We screwed up. One person we wanted to save died. But instead we're watching someone else do it.
I might wait for it to go on sale, but
Sure.
this does look fairly interesting.
If you didn't, I mean, if you enjoyed Until Dawn, you'll enjoy this. Not played Until, you should play.
I haven't played that either.
Go play Until Dawn first. If you can get, if Until Dawn is on PC, I don't know if it is. You should play it.
I think it is.
Play is PC.
Do that one first. It's better.
Until Dawn. Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Until Dawn is a absolute classic. The Quarry is good, but it's flawed in very ways. I'd love to see a review of them, but to be fair, you could play them both in a couple days because, like I said, they're only like 8-10 hours, not long.
It's very good.
But you might play them a second time because you're gonna inevitably kill people. Our first playthrough, when I say our, I really mean say, because I didn't play Until Dawn. I just watched her figure it out. Her first playthrough of Until Dawn, she saved more characters than we did in the Quarry. We literally had one person survive the Quarry the first playthrough. Mostly because we just fat-fingered a couple things. Just at bad times. We did fine everywhere else, but the path we chose, we were pretty much on the right path for the Quarry. We kind of knew we played characters properly to be sane as opposed to being absolutely stupid shitbird young teenagers. Well, they're like in their 20s. They drink alcohol, but they're not necessarily 21. But they never explicitly say how old they are. But they talk about going away to college, as in it feels like they're just going to college. So that sounds like they're 18 years old, not 21, right? But they don't make that explicit.
Very common. I drank well before I turned 21 as well. Come get me, police.
Young and stupid, basically.
Sure, and we all were that way. We all did that in our own respective ways, whatever that happened.
I think I like the cast of The Quarry more than I like the cast of Until Dawn. Though there are standout characters in Until Dawn. I'm not saying bad things about it. I'm just saying, overall, I think they did a better solid. There is one character that I absolutely ate in Until Dawn.
I think she was made to be hated.
I agree. And she's also a pain in the ass to keep alive. You have to go out of your way to make sure she's... Well, but I won't say anything more because I don't want to spoil it. But seriously, I would say you should see, if you've not played them and the thought of a cheesy 80s horror movie, just playing the video game, if that's interesting to you, you need to play both of these. And then the Dark Pictures is... It supposedly got better over time. We did not play any of the three. We actually are going to play the third one. They're not related. They're just anthology games. They called it the Dark Pictures. That was the thing they were going to do after their success with Until Dawn. They just didn't nail it for whatever reason, like story beats. And third one was supposed to be the best. So it was like after playing the Quarry, we're like, well, maybe we'll go back and play the one that actually had a decent reputation. Maybe we'll go play the other two.
Yeah, I would say that for you, start out with Until Dawn.
Yeah.
I think even though the Quarry is good, I'm not going to give away any stories or any spoilers or anything like that. I think as far as story goes, potentially the Quarry is a little bit predictable.
Sure.
I was questioning something in particular in it, and I won't say what it was pretty much right away when the game started because of predictability. And then what everybody is complaining about is the ending. I think in Until Dawn, they took a lot more care to be able to because of the fact that how it ends in Until Dawn, you actually have the people that survived provide a take on the events that happened.
It wraps up better is the simple way to say it.
Yeah, it does wrap up better, and you could see that take. While the Quarry, you just see the picture of the character and whether they survived or died.
Okay.
And just a small blurb. And that is kind of disappointing just because of the fact that you've put the players through this story and trying to be able to do the best ending as possible of people surviving, and now you get this blurb.
It's a flawed but fun game. Until Dawn is a seminal masterpiece. We will not be the only people that crowd about it. Anyone who's into that genre will tell you, or anyone who's it has good reviews. Like, it's just a solid game. It's like the game to point to for horror game.
Sure.
The Quarry is finally back on the right track, back to like the heights they succeeded. So it's fun.
Great.
It's just not as good. So like, I'm pretty sure you could get Until Dawn for cheap. Been out for so long.
Like $10, but it's for PS4. I don't have a PS4. I'm not interested in buying one.
That's a shame.
But I do see that it's inspired by the films Psycho, The Haunting, The Exorcist, Halloween, Poltergeist, Evil Dead 2, and The Conjuring.
Well, if nothing else,
I see it all.
You could go watch someone play it to get a gist.
Sure.
I was hoping they had ported it. That's actually a shame because they could make so much money if they ported it.
I looked on Steam and it wasn't on Steam.
Yeah.
So, I'm not so hardcore to gamer that I need to have every console. I love my custom build higher end PC because I've been PC gaming since I was very young, and my happy place, in the words of Happy Gilmore, is right here on my desk in front of my monitor, right next to my PC, and that feels more comfortable to me than my actually more objectively comfortable couch. Right? It's a psychological thing,
right.
But yeah.
No, I'm with you. We usually have in the past have ended up with pretty much everything in a console generation in the past, just because. But like, not day one, but it's like over Christmas or Thanksgiving sales, we'd end up picking up things. We tend to have a console just for fun couch co-op, so that we can just go play.
Given that it's like if I was with somebody that was a hardcore gamer as well, I'm sure that I would get a setup to where that would be the case, right? Get a console and do some couch co-op stuff. That would make perfect sense for me, right? Because that's a lot more together than just gaming both at your same computers, respectively. Different rooms.
I mean, it's fun to play games on the computer, but sometimes it's fun to just chill on the couch and do something like play Death Road to Canada. Fantastic.
You're closer to somebody, physically, and you can just turn to them and talk, right? There's more going on there socially, I feel like. Than just talking over the internet, despite the fact that you're, 30 feet away from each other, right? Depending on where you're sitting versus where they're sitting. But
that's we don't have a PS5 because Sony has decided to be jackasses because they won the last console generation. So, whenever Sony has a good console, they're the worst people to deal with because they just basically become entitled jackasses.
I think that happens to both of them.
Not the same way. Like,
no, not the same way, but still,
Sony knew that they could basically prevent cross-platform gameplay with Fortnite and other things. Not that I care about Fortnite, but they just did everything their way to be anti player friendly. They didn't care because everyone's playing our system. We don't need to be. And then as soon as they got their ass kicked, then they're like, "Oh, we're sorry. We'll do all these nice things for you now. See, we're good guys." I'm like, I'm not buying anymore. So with them being jerks and Xbox having the Game Pass, it's a no-brainer.
Unfortunately, with, like Tatharis mentioned, the whole thing of their whole attitude has just completely turned me off. And it's just, okay, I'll go back to just PC gaming, and we have, like you mentioned, the Xbox for couch co-op, just because there's certain games that is better to sit side by side with somebody, and there's certain games that is better that on the computer, like Borderlands. I refuse to play Borderlands on the console just because of the split screen.
Well, sure. Anything that first person is going to be better, I think, on PC versus, if you're both looking at the same view, but both of your characters are on the same screen, that seems fairly ideal for couch co-op to me. But What do I know? I mean, I don't play couch co-op anymore. I used to, back when I was married, I had the Wii, and we played a lot of Wii games together. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, mostly the people that I play games with now, we just hop on Discord and we have a video chat and we play, various ones. Fair amount of Deep Rock Galactic. That's a super fun one on PC. With another buddy that I almost never get a chance to see anymore because we've known each other since we were teenagers. But now we're all older, right? Everybody's got their own lives. You don't get to see a lot of people the same way that you do when you were younger. So, but that works out, part of getting older, right?
We really need to set up, speaking of co-op games, I would like to see potentially maybe playing some Deep Rock and potentially going back to playing some Project Zomboid.
Yeah, I could do either one of those. Those are great. Both great games. Honestly, Project Zomboid, the more I play it, the more I like it. There's just a lot of depth to it and therefore a higher learning curve than some games, but that's never bothered me. It's just getting past that hurdle, and then usually it gets that much more fun. Like, Crusader Kings 3, it took me a while to understand what even the hell I was doing. But once I did, it's like, oh, this is awesome. I love this.
The good news about Project Zomboid is they apparently got some AAA integration tech that they've been experimenting with that supposedly was going to let them do a massive UI overhaul. So wait another year and maybe we'll actually have a halfway decent UI. That's probably the worst part of that game. Inventory management is a pain.
The worst part of that game.
But it's because the game started in like 2013 or something. I mean, it's been in development forever and it's massively improved. It's like it's one of the few early access games that I swear by, right? Like that's worth playing in early access because of what they've done. To your point, I couldn't speak highly enough about it. The other thing I was going to say is we're probably due for like a Halloween extravaganza for Phasmophobia again. That could be a fun thing for us to record. Obviously, you'll not take game capture for me because mine will be boring as I hide inside the van.
Capture you whimpering.
Well, you can have my voice, but I'm just saying I'm sorry. I'm the manager. You're my red shirts. You're the ones that need to be my disposable assets that I keep rehiring, from the local McDonald's when they get sick of working there. They can go die to ghosts. All right. Well, we've rambled for a bunch. I assume we're going to ramble for a lot longer. But...
Well, we are mostly rambling to ourselves at this moment. So we could have gone on forever if we wanted to, but...
I mean, we're going to have maybe one or two nerds that we don't know that might watch this ever in our lives, but that's okay. This
is for our entertainment, not for you, audience. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it. And there you go. There's our outro.